Heavy Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me here today on hmTv. I'm your host, Bernie Furshpan of Ordinary Heroes. I have a very special person here today. I'm so excited to have her here on my podcast. She's more than an ordinary hero. She's an exceptional person, exceptional hero. A little bit about my guest. She was raised in a Jewish home in Iran. She was featured on Bravo, Netflix, Fox Biz, Fox News, Newsmax. She has 28,000 following her on Instagram. She graduated from the Cornell Medical School and practiced as a surgical physician's assistant. She's known as the self-worth whisperer. Please help me welcome Vivace Maxvictor. Hello, and
Hi.
thank you for coming this way.
I'm so excited to be here.
How far did you have to travel to get here?
Manhattan, you're worth it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Worth every minute.
That's sweet. I appreciate that. And I was excited to have you on this
Thank you.
podcast because you are a most incredible individual.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
There's only a few people like yourself who came out of incredible adversity, who did something great with themselves. I think most people who do great things had some kind of adversity in their lives. Would you agree with that?
Agreed. Yes.
Especially, like, for example, Holocaust survivors. Many of them became very successful business people because they appreciated the very simple things that they didn't have.
Absolutely. Adversity gives you life skills that you could never have outside of having been through sadly, the trauma, turmoil, and torture.
It's so true. So I'm going to start off with a few questions regarding the things that you do today and some of the things that you've been through in Iran. You know, you've been through some rough times, some very heavy moments. You've made some good decisions. You've made not so great decisions, but you learned from them. That's the beauty of it, is that you learned a lot of life lessons very quickly. But you did something with yourself, and you're helping others come out of their funk.
Yes, it's such a privilege.
Many people assume that growing up under the Islamic regime would have been the greatest fear, but yet with your particular situation, you feared your father a lot. So let me ask you about your father. His behavior, was that part of a culture?
No.
Or was that his personality?
No. That was his personality. We're Jewish. It's not a part of our culture to treat women that way or to treat children that way.
Did the Islamic fundamentalist regime have any impact on people's behaviors?
Well, my father was, in my opinion, a sociopath, always. Mm-hmm. So it's not that the Islamic regime amplified his tendencies. And I do say that I was more afraid of my father than I was of the Islamic regime, even as a little Jewish girl in Iran.
And that's something that's very sad to hear. Unfortunately, you witnessed violence not only against yourself, but your mother as well.
Always.
There was physical, emotional, even sexual abuse. How did those experiences shape the way you saw yourself as a young person?
It tormented me for decades.
Mm-hmm.
I felt less than. I felt broken. I felt like a second-class citizen. I felt there was something wrong with me. I felt inadequate. I felt insecure. I felt not good enough.
Did you feel like you had to suppress your real self in order to be safe?
I had to suppress the truth in order to live.
Sounds like your own personal Holocaust.
It was very challenging, which is why I became one of the biggest advocates for the hostages, because I understood what it's like to have someone take your agency away from you.
Mm-hmm. So eventually you ended up here in the United States.
Yes.
You had an incredibly adverse life in Iran. When there was the revolution, somehow you managed to escape. Your family escaped at that time?
Yes, my mom had kidney failure, so we actually left through the Department of Health in Iran. And we went to London where she got medical treatment, and now she's fine.
Well, I'm glad that she's fine. And
yes.
And I'm glad that there was a reason why you were able to get out.
Yes.
Because
it was a blessing in disguise.
It sure was. So you pursued medicine. You became a surgical physician's assistant. You graduated from Cornell University. What motivated you to choose this particular path?
Well, my only motivation was so that no man could control me financially. So I did my undergrad in biology. I hated it. Then I got a master's in biology and I hated it. Then I went to Cornell Medical School, graduated as a surgical PA. I wanted to have a career where I could have financial independence so that I would never be in the position my mother was in. Although my mom was a dental hygienist and she actually worked for my dad for 15 years.
He was a dentist?
He was like a celebrity dentist. Oh. So he saw very dignified, high-profile people, and he never paid her. So for the 15 years she worked for him, she never got paid.
Well, what is she doing now?
She's retired now, but she's always worked.
God bless her. You've asked a powerful question. What's the point of achievement without fulfillment? When did you have this realization? When did it hit you?
I mean, even at Cornell, when I was on all my medical and surgical rotations, I was with all these different surgeons and these people who were highly acclaimed. And I had no fulfillment. So it actually meant nothing to me outside of posturing and positioning. There's no value if you're doing something that doesn't fulfill your soul and your heart. Right.
I watched a video of you describing your past and your realizations, which are very incredible.
Thank you.
You use the term your heart and your soul, right? What's in your heart and your soul. Do you consider them one and the same?
I don't know about my definition. I think the soul is something sacred. The heart is maybe an organ and also
symbolic
center of intelligence. Yes. It has its own intelligence. So I feel like when they're unified together with your mind, then and as a pure existence, you're in total alignment. Instead of having, I have so many coaching clients who have inner conflict where a part of them doesn't agree with another part of them. So let's say they're going after financial success, but they're betraying themselves or betraying their wife or betraying their children. So I think that alignment, mind, body, spirit, is essential.
Well said.
Thank you.
Was there a moment when you knew you could not continue living a life that didn't align with your heart?
Well, my biggest turning point, as you know, you've watched my story, is I was drugged and raped. I didn't get help. It was the most awful night of my life. And so thereafter, I mean, obviously I even have challenges talking about it, but thereafter I became suicidal. I picked my own expiration date. I was a few days away from my expiration date. So once I got help, there was a girl who told me about a brain scan years ago, and I went and I got a brain scan, and they showed me, and I didn't quite believe them, but they showed me my brain relative to a quote-unquote normal brain that doesn't exist, and all the trauma centers in my brain were on level 10. And so I got medication they medicated me for two things. One was to regulate my brain, and the other one was the lady claimed that I had ADHD. And I remember her saying, "You have ADHD?" And I said, "I don't." She said, "You do." She made me take a test and I failed the test. And I told her, I said, "Lady," she was a psychiatrist, I said, "I'm suicidal. I can't focus because I'm suicidal. It's not that I can't focus because I have ADHD. So anyway, I took these two medications. They helped me. I don't know about the ADHD medication, the other one did, so that I could start to address the trauma and start to get help. And so that was my turning point was literally death was my turning point.
Did you attempt suicide?
No, I had picked the date. I was a few days away, and as a surgical PA, I had access to all sorts of narcotics.
Right, so you kind of mitigated that whole thing with the medication, would you say? And then you had this
realization? The medication helped. The medication definitely helped.
And you crossed that off the calendar?
Sadly, it's something that kind of reappears on the calendar.
I see. And so you said that you needed to take responsibility for yourself. But how can you be responsible if you were raped after being drugged?
I wanted to be self-determining about my path thereafter. So many people have trauma, and we don't want to get over-identified with the trauma. What I help people do, and you mentioned self-worth whisperer, is to help people gain their self-worth back after trauma. I think it's extremely, extremely important. And the fact that it's even possible. I didn't know healing was possible. I hoped it was possible, but I didn't know that it was possible.
You've said something very profound. People often don't want to kill themselves. They want to kill the pain.
I've heard it from other survivors as well. that the pain is so extraordinary. It's so unbearable. The only way that I could explain it as the way that I was experiencing it was like a jackhammer that just got louder from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed. I couldn't tolerate that level of pain and grief and sadness. It was layers of trauma I had never addressed. I just kept going to school and getting good grades and getting more diplomas, collecting the diplomas, and I never addressed my emotional wounds.
But you eventually did.
Yes, eventually.
And you've done some amazing things, which we will get into.
Thank you.
You talk about transforming PTSD into what you call post-traumatic growth. What does that mean to you?
Post-traumatic growth is actually a term. So many people are familiar with PTSD, right. And my rage is that the media doesn't cover post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is when you actually become stronger after the trauma than you were before. You become integrated. And there's so many more resources that you can have. As you mentioned, people who've been through adversity. If you integrate that trauma, you can have power more than 99% of people who are walking this earth.
Now, my father was a Holocaust survivor,
Yes.
the only one out of 8 people. He had PTSD because what he went through in the forest was horrific. He was forced as a 10-year-old boy to silence a baby by a mother.
Wow.
And the baby was crying as the the Nazis were coming through the forest. And so a lot of mothers had to silence their children, but she forced the child, my dad, to silence the child. And so he would wake up in the middle of the night crying. As a teenager, I didn't know why until I got older. My mom told me why he would wake up with this PTSD. Now, he never went through any programs. They didn't believe in therapy.
Yes.
But the thing is that even though he passed on, because it's called intergenerational trauma, he passed it on to me, my brother, I am not as triggered by these things, and I went into a personal journey of personal growth myself.
Yes.
And I feel very evolved as a person, and I think back and I said, I don't know how I did that with the kind of pain that my parents endured and shared with us in so many different ways.
I think when you grow up in an environment where you're loved, so much healing can happen.
That's the one word I can think of, and that is loved. I was very much loved by my parents.
When you feel loved, it wires your brain very, very, very differently.
Yeah.
And your sense of safety in the world as well.
Right.
And I'm very sorry that that's what your parents experienced.
Yeah, thank you.
There is a procedure that I'm very excited to talk about that
Please
I had
do.
done for PTSD.
Yes.
It won't replace, in my opinion, therapy, and it won't replace coaching, but it is called a stellate ganglion block. And I had researched, because I had all these medical issues that came up suddenly, severe medical issues. I was basically in bed for 2 years. I had chronic fatigue. It was very, very hard. I would do coaching calls, cry, sleep, coaching calls, cry, sleep, go to the doctor, coaching calls, cry, sleep. For 2 years, and it came out of nowhere. And so a lot of times suppressed trauma can also be activated in the body. So I would constantly Google spontaneous remission, or PTSD treatment, because I knew one of my diagnoses by the psychiatrist was PTSD. And so there's a procedure called the stellate ganglion block, and I'd witnessed many videos of war survivors, veterans, saying they had this procedure done and how it changed their life. So I got an appointment. I flew to another state, and I wasn't sure what would happen. And so in their testimonials, they had said, they put you under anesthesia, they inject this thing in your neck, they wake you up, they ask you what your symptoms are, then if your symptoms aren't gone, they put you back under anesthesia again, and they repeat this. And I remember that this anesthesiologist had done it 3 times for one person. So when I flew out there, I was hopeful. I didn't know what to expect. And at that time, the symptom that was very bothersome to me was I was constantly agitated all the time. I was just agitated. Nothing was happening, and my whole nervous system was, from the moment I woke up, I was agitated. If I even had a great day, I was still agitated. And so I wanted to see if there was a way to mitigate this. So I took him a pair of socks, and the socks had puzzle pieces on them. And I gave them to him, and I said, I hope you're my puzzle piece. And right before the procedure, he put on the socks, and we took a photo together. And I was so hopeful that something would happen. And so I tried to negotiate with him before. I said, I saw in one of the videos, you did it 3 times. Will you do it 3 times for me? And he said, no, the protocol is twice. That's it. And I kept trying to negotiate with him. And he's like, I'm only going to do this twice. And then I said, how will I know that it worked? He's like, when I wake you up, you'll know. And I can give you photos. You're welcome to use it with your audience.
How did you know?
I didn't know. So he puts me under anesthesia. They take me to the OR. They do this thing. I photos, and I told him, I said, take photos, because if this works, I'm going to tell everyone. And so this is before I was even on social media active or anything. So he did it. He woke me up, and he's like, how do you feel? I said, I feel exactly the same. And I was hysterically crying. And he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. And I was, again, trying to negotiate with him. I'm like, do it a 3rd time. Do it a 3rd time. He's like, I'm not doing it again. This is it. This is like, it's the next time. Sure. And so he's like, stop crying. So I calmed down. I recovered. They took me back. He did it again. They woke me up. And he's like, how do you feel? And I said, it's gone.
Wow.
And it was gone.
What was gone?
That agitation, the constant agitation was literally gone.
Where did you feel this agitation?
Everywhere.
Was it throughout your body?
My entire existence was constantly agitated.
No kidding.
Yeah, agitated, uncomfortable. They had me...
almost like anxiety, would you say? Kind of like...
I was... my best word is agitated. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't be relaxed. I couldn't be comfortable. I couldn't... Even if nothing was happening, I was constantly agitated. So you felt the opposite.
You felt relaxed?
It was gone.
You felt comfortable?
This thing left.
Whatever that was.
And all these veterans had some version of the story where they woke up and it was gone. And so I feel very strongly about a stellate ganglion block for people like in Israel, the IDF, or American soldiers, anyone who's had severe PTSD. I don't think it's talked about enough. I do think there was one drawback. This is my guess and belief. I don't know if it's correlation and causation, but it did screw with my memory. So in taking care of the bad memories, it also did screw with my good memories.
I understand.
Yeah.
And so I would think that some of this agitation that you experience can cause illness. It can cause chronic problems.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't. Part of the reason was I also went when I had these issues. So I was hoping and praying that it would delete all those issues. It didn't.
Right.
But the stellate ganglion block was definitely
It's not
wonderful.
like pressing the delete button.
It pressed some delete buttons.
It did.
It definitely deleted a lot of files, but there are other files in there. And unfortunately, it deleted some good files as well.
You talk about self-mastery and taking responsibility.
Yes.
For your own well-being. What does that look like in practical terms?
Practical terms, if something has hurt you, do something about it. And I think it's so challenging. I think finding a good therapist or finding a good coach is like dating. The first person that you date, you're probably not going to marry. And so sometimes people go to, I know all the therapists that I went to, like almost all of them were awful. Mm-hmm. They didn't understand me. They couldn't relate to me. I felt more defeated after I went to therapy. I felt more screwed up because I'm like, I came here, I spoke to you for an hour, and there's no resources. Nothing changed. I just told the story again and again and again and again. And people are tired of telling their own story. So I think where my coaching is extremely different is very results-oriented and solution-oriented.
Mm-hmm. You coined a term that I love. You often describe something you call the treasure box within you. What is this metaphor about?
I think that God has placed a treasure box in each human being, and it's our job during this lifetime to find it,
to discover it,
open
right?
it, and then to share it.
Wonderful. I love that.
Thank you.
Do you have any anecdotes, any stories, any case studies of some of your clientele that you can describe?
I have tons of stories.
Just tell us one short one.
Well, I just want to talk about 7 trauma patterns that keep you stuck.
Right.
Right. And what you could do to break through the trauma loop.
Let's talk about that.
One of my coaching clients who came to me shared an incredible story. She had gone to another coach overseas, and my client was in her 30s. She looked wonderful. She looked healthy. She looked radiant. And she had just realized that she was HIV positive. And the coach had told her, don't make HIV your identity. And I find it so powerful to not make your trauma your identity. It's such a beautiful moment where you make that decision that this happened to me, but it's not my identity. Your identity is so much bigger than that. So that's a story that has always stayed with me that I actually use with my own clients, no matter what they come in with, is don't make this your identity.
Right.
Also, I have other stories that I wanted to share with you. I think, so the number one pattern, these 7 patterns, because I would love to give your guest things that they can write down, things that they can implement that
Very
are
good.
practical tools.
Yes.
So the number one pattern that I find that are keeping people stuck is a self-attack and self-blame. And I think people get stuck in the trauma loop too long, attacking themselves or blaming themselves. I know for me, even with the night that I was drugged and raped, I did ask, why did I go out that night? You know, it was a Sunday night. I went to my regular neighborhood place where I always went to. I'd felt safe, but I know after I went to my neighborhood place, I went to another neighborhood place to say hi. And I remember the waiter who I knew for many years, so I knew it wasn't him. He said, why don't you sit down? And I said, it says reserved on this table. And he goes, well, just sit. I know you, just sit there till I get here. And I sat there and these men came and I got up to leave and they said, no, stay with us. If I had honored my instinct, I would have left, but I didn't want to be rude. And so I sat. And I think so many times you can blame yourself if you had any type of trauma, whether it's personal trauma, financial trauma. There's bystander trauma. You and I have talked about bystander trauma. That is so big on social media, where people are constantly scrolling social media, and you're imprinting your nervous system with the most horrific things that are happening, whether it's in Israel right now, in Iran, all over the world. And I think it's really important to be mindful of that.
Very good.
So the self-blame and self-attack we have to stop. The bystander trauma is something that we have agency over. So if you want to limit your time with social media, I think that's absolutely necessary. I know after my 2 years of advocacy for the hostages, I needed to take a few months off of social media just so I could recalibrate my own nervous system.
Very good.
There is...
Good advice.
Thank you. So pattern number 2 is stop re-traumatizing yourself. It's important to talk about mirror neurons. Mirror neurons allow us to have empathy for another person. At the same time, mirror neurons are like airdrop, where you airdrop other people's emotions into your existence. So if you have a girlfriend who's complaining, or if you're around someone who's going through a very traumatic period, I had a coaching client of mine who told me, my husband comes, he drops all his trauma into my lap, he feels better, and then I'm left with it, right? So her mirror neurons would get totally activated. He'd feel amazing. He'd walk away, and then she would be left with it. So I think the second strategy is for sure to stop re-traumatizing yourself. And if you're exposing yourself, whether it's to a spouse or an environment at work or any other environment that is detrimental to you, for you to stop doing that. Can I go with my 7?
Please, go for it.
My third pattern is one of my favorites is to stop gaslighting yourself. I think so many times we gaslight ourselves, especially when we compare trauma to trauma. I know people who've watched my story on YouTube often say, well, I didn't have it as bad as you, so I feel embarrassed complaining to you. And I think that that's the wrong way to think about it. Your trauma doesn't have to be as bad as someone else's.
Right.
It's how it imprints your nervous system. And it's how it keeps you stuck, whether it's in your business, in your finances, in your relationship. I find that when clients are stuck, there's usually unhealed underlying trauma. So step number 3 is to stop gaslighting yourself. Step number 4, I have a story. You asked for stories. There's a client of mine who had a premature baby. The baby was born at 25 weeks, tiny, tiny, tiny little preemie. And she was telling me when she started coaching, she was overseas, and she started to tell me about how they airlifted this child from this place to this hospital, how the child, this newborn, almost didn't make it multiple times. And I was asking her about how she's dealing with this level of grief and this level of trauma. Like, she was so excited to have the baby. The baby obviously came early. And she said, I just get on with it. And her frame of reference was, and she wasn't Jewish, so it was very interesting that she would use this frame, but she knew about my advocacy. She's like, well, it's not as bad as the hostages have it. And I said, you're entitled to your trauma. Like, you're entitled that this thing, she was living pretty much at the hospital day and night with this newborn. And so I think it's important definitely to not gaslight yourself and to not trauma compare, because you could put yourself in a position where you're minimizing the amount of pain, torture, anger, grief, hurt that you're feeling, and feel like you don't have a right to express it and or to get proper resources to heal it.
Very good. I'll talk to you about that after you do the 7 because I have.
Is it okay?
I have a question about that particular.
Please.
But keep going.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Pattern number 4 to help your people get out of a trauma loop is do not isolate yourself. Either people isolate themselves after they've had trauma, or there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So one of my coaching clients, she had a lot of relationship trauma, and she had a large network of girlfriends. So every time she would meet a guy, she would talk to 10 different people, and she'd get all this input, and it literally paralyzed her. She couldn't think straight. So for her, it's like you're not isolating yourself, but there are too many cooks in the kitchen. So I told her, I said, in our entire coaching relationship, this is the only place you get to talk about relationships. And let's do it in a way that's structured and that's productive. And it actually impacted her relationships really well because she wasn't going and basically debating all these people and getting all these various points of view that were preventing her from hearing her own voice. And I 100% believe all the answers are inside you. You just need someone to help you navigate to get to the truth of what's really the core issue and your core desire for you. So don't isolate, which is what I did. I isolated. And what she did is she surrounded herself with too many people who had way too much input. She could never heal from her trauma because there was too many different directions being thrown at her.
Very good.
Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going. You got 7,
I feel
right?
like,
You're
yes,
on your 5th?
Yes.
Let's do
I'm
all 7.
on the 5th. So number 5 pattern is survivor guilt. Survivor guilt is real. I've had multiple clients who've lost their siblings, whether by suicide, drugs, or other forms. So survivor guilt is a major, major thing. It can also happen when we're watching what is happening in Israel, or if something happened to a loved one and you were safe. There were so many Malibu fires, for example. You can have a tremendous amount of survivor guilt. For anyone who's lost a sibling, I did find this book. I have nothing to do with it, but on Amazon, I use it with my clients. It's How to Survive the Loss of a Sibling. And so I think books like that are extremely important. They give you permission to have unimaginable grief and to process your grief and not minimize what you've been through.
Very good.
So number 6 is you must recognize your own PTSD. PTSD is when your nervous system doesn't understand that the danger is over. And so I wanted to share about the stellate ganglion block. I thought that was important.
Very good.
And my last one is what you already mentioned is post-traumatic growth. Follow survivor stories of people who are on the other side. I think sometimes on especially social media, we can hear so many stories of people who are in the midst of trauma, and that can activate your trauma. It can trigger your trauma. The mirror neurons can actually traumatize you by listening to all these stories. But they're powerful stories as well. I know that one of the hostages, Eli Sharabi, he didn't give me 2 pieces of advice. He gave us 2 pieces of advice, and it was so powerful. He said, I'm a practical man. So his brother had been murdered by Hamas. His wife had been murdered by Hamas. His 2 daughters had been murdered by Hamas. And he said, I'm practical. So he went back to Israel, and he started a new relationship. And it's so powerful and profound to see what this man has been through. 700 days being held hostage. And yet he said, I'm a practical person. He said, I could stay in bed all day and do nothing, or I can get up. And he got up and he fought. And he said during the time that he was captive, I don't know how this is possible, but it's food for thought. He said, I was very optimistic. And Eli Sharabi spoke Arabic, so he was able to understand what the hostage keepers, Hamas, the terrorists, were saying, and he was able to communicate with them. So it's even in that he found what was, I don't want to say good about it, but where he could be empowered within it. Another hostage who came back, Guy Gilboa Dalal, he spoke very soon after his release, after 700 days. He spoke at a temple in Manhattan, and he shared about how he had been sexually violated by Hamas. And I find that for a man to share this is especially so powerful.
Yes.
And he told us the details of it.
He put himself out there, very vulnerable.
My respect for him, I already respect all of them and what they'd endured, but for him to be able to verbalize this, I never verbalized what happened to me for years, many, many years later, for him to immediately be able to put that on a national scale. And so I spoke to Guy Gilboa Dalal. I went up to him and I said, Thank you so much for sharing what you've been through. I've been raped, so I really appreciate your testimony. And you wouldn't imagine what his reaction was. This guy had been held hostage for over 700 days. He had just gotten back from Israel. This was like 6 weeks out. When I told him this, he looked at me, he said, "Can I hug you?" Mm-hmm. So he hugged me to comfort me. Mm-hmm. These people are incredible. Their testimonies are unimaginable.
That is incredible. I think you used the word optimistic, and it's also parallel to hope, right? The Jews during Hatikvah, which is the title of the Israeli national anthem, to have hope. And I think that Jews in hiding, like my dad, he always had hope, he said. He never lost hope, and that's what kept him going. So being optimistic keeps you going.
Yeah, I do want to say, though, for all the people who might be suicidal,
right?
It is very difficult to have hope. Yeah. It was very, I had no hope.
I can't imagine.
I had no hope. And so the reason I posted my story on YouTube, which is literally the hardest thing I've done in my life, volitionally. I remember I went for the video to be filmed, and my legs were shaking in front of the camera. And I said, I have to take my high heels off because I couldn't stand. And I told the makeup artist, I said, I'm probably going to cry. And he's like, you're not going to cry. I said, no, I'm probably going to cry. And I said, if I cry, just keep shooting. Like, I don't want to hide anything. And hiding your trauma is so painful. And so I finally shared the story. And for many weeks after I posted it on YouTube, I was terrified that all my corporate clients would think I'm the crazy suicidal girl and that they would leave me. And I did have one of my amazing clients who had referred a lot of people to me. She said something to me. She said, we don't like to see you like that. We want to see you strength. And I said, where do you think my strength comes from?
Correct.
Like, that's where my strength comes from. And so I just want to say, for any of your audience who is feeling, going through dark times and, God forbid, feeling suicidal, please read other people's testimonies. There is a way out. And if you go to the first therapist and the first coach, go to the 5th one and the 10th one. If you're listening to this, there is hope, even if you don't feel it.
There are solutions for everybody, you know. And there are people who want to help. You know, even though some people may not want to help, there are people who want to help.
Well, there's a difference between wanting to help and knowing how to help. All the therapists who were highly accredited didn't know how to help me.
Right, but they wanted to, but they didn't necessarily know how.
They didn't have the skill set to help me. There's a thing, it's called the unhealed healer. These people were unhealed healers. They did not have the tools and the skill set to help someone as desperate and broken and devastated as me. And that was terrifying. It was terrifying to go to person after person after person to spend all this money. At the time, I had student loans. So to even spend, I was literally working at a job I hated, at medicine, to make the money, to pay for therapy, to go on repeat. It was devastating.
You have some incredible insight. And I think this is very helpful to probably a lot of people who are going to be watching this. And I just want to go back. I think it was number 3.
Sure.
You said stop gaslighting yourself.
Yes.
And so, you know, there's something I learned from my mom. She was a survivor. And what she did was put life in perspective for me. She always said it could always be worse. For example,
that's true.
The person without the shoes should look at the person without the feet.
Yes.
Right? And I know, like right this very second, there are people right now in a hospital, somewhere dying today. By the end of the day, they will no longer be here.
Correct.
And they would jump up and down to have whatever problems I have versus what they have. You see what I'm saying? Relative.
Perhaps.
But no, you made a very good point, because my mother always used to tell me, oh, it's not the end of the world. So she made me kind of, I don't know if that's gaslighting or maybe sweep it under the rug, but maybe it did accumulate. So what do you say about people who say, oh, you know, don't sweat it, it's not the end of the world?
Well, I remember the Dalai Lama said this once. The Dalai Lama said, if you're in the hospital and your foot hurts and the person next to you doesn't have a leg, does that make your foot hurt less?
No, it doesn't.
You're entitled to your pain.
You're absolutely right.
You're entitled to your pain.
I like the way you see things, and I like your observation, and it's a very good point that you make.
You know, I went to group therapy once, and there were 6 of us, and it was a multi-day. It was like a, 1 week type of thing. And our stories were awful. Like, one story was worse than the next. And then there was a guy who were all women. And then there was a man in our group, and he said, I'm embarrassed to share my story after I've heard all your testimonies. I feel stupid sharing my story. And then we're like, no, tell us your story, tell us your story. And then he told us a story that he was so sheepish about sharing, but the 5 of us understood him better than he understood himself because he was gaslighting himself. So he said when he was in high school, he was on the baseball team, and he was getting on the baseball team. He had already been on the baseball team. He had his best friends. They were all together, and he was waiting for them, and they drove up to him, and he was, I guess, not picked for this year's baseball team. And he was waiting for them. They came up, and they just drove away, and he lost that friendship. And we gasped for him because we said we understand the pain of suddenly not belonging, of suddenly not being good enough. And his entire life from that moment was an overcompensation to prove he was good enough. So was it the most devastating thing that happened, that he wasn't picked for the baseball team? It was devastating to his nervous system, to his psyche, to his sense of self, and to his identity. So we, who had been through relatively severe trauma, understood how traumatic that could be for someone. Right. And that in that moment, for me, trauma is something that happens to you that your nervous system can't handle. And from that moment, you're never the same again.
It's true.
And so he was never the same again.
There's some kind of damage, for sure. Yeah. But some of it can be healed. And apparently, you have some of these tools.
I do this all day with my clients.
You are incredible. You have so much life wisdom. And you share it with the world. We are grateful that you're around to do this, to help people.
I'm grateful to be here, and what you're doing for the Jewish people is extraordinary.
Thank you.
With the Holocaust education, I think it's really important, and I think it's important for people to share their testimony.
Right.
I come from Iran. In our culture, you don't talk about rape, you don't talk about domestic violence, you don't talk about sexual abuse, you don't talk about physical abuse, you don't talk about being suicidal. And so there's so much stigma and shame attached to all of these words, especially as an Iranian Jew. So I feel that it's important for us to stand in our truth and in our power and our authority to share that this has happened to me, and it doesn't devastate the culture and it doesn't devastate the community. What devastates communities is lying and hiding and shaming and stigmatizing people for having mental health issues that are secondary to trauma and or if you were born with them. And I find that that is really unacceptable.
Well said. And we're going to wrap up this podcast. I tell you, there's a lot to digest. And
watch it twice.
Watch it 3 times. Watch it 7 times, whatever it takes. You know, there's so much valuable information here. I think this is one of the best podcasts that we've done here.
That's
we're almost
very
at
kind
5.
Of you. Thank you.
We're almost at 500 podcast episodes here in just 1 year. So
congratulations to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much. And we have 30 other podcasters here, and there's so much great content about so many different topics regarding Humanity Matters. I'm going to leave you with the final words and final thoughts. I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yes.
If you could speak to the younger version of yourself, okay?
I would hug her.
Growing up in Iran, what would you tell her?
Again, I wouldn't tell her so much about growing up in Iran. I would tell her about growing up in that chaotic, satanic household. That she mattered and she was worth it. And
that's what you would tell her?
I would tell her that I see her.
Yeah.
I think she just wanted someone to see her.
Yeah.
And this is why for my coaching clients, I make it my mission to see them. I think when you see someone, when you truly see them, you can really heal them.
Yes.
Just by seeing them.
Right. We all need that validation to feel valuable.
Even more recently, one of the hostage parents, she said to me, this is before we knew each other well, she said, and she was distant, you know, she was very distant from us. And she said, I see you. Like that was everything to me.
Yeah.
And even now it brings me to tears because for someone who's been overlooked, for someone who's been pulverized, for someone who's been neglected, for someone who's been so severely damaged, being seen as like getting an Olympic gold medal.
Yeah. You are a light for so many people.
Thank you.
Thank you for lighting up this dark world. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, you are terrific. Vivace Maxvictor, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and there's plenty more on my website. So if you're struggling,
Right.
and go to
What's the website?
selfworthwhisperer.com, and I will whisper self-worth into you.
There you go. That's selfworthwhisperer.com.
Yeah.
Be sure to check that out and learn more about her incredible insights and wisdom that will definitely impact you in such a great way. So I want to thank my listening audience and watching audience today for joining us here on Ordinary Heroes. I'm Bernie Furshpan of hmTV. Until next time.